You are listening to the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast with your host, Eric Logan. No Gimmicks, Just Sweat is dedicated to hearing the journeys and unique stories behind an athlete's training and what drives them. Get inspired to own your life and make the impossible possible. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a few seconds to rate the show and drop me a review. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, Danielle Ford. Danielle, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Eric. How about yourself?
I am wonderful. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so to get started, we're going to start with some basic rapid-fire questions, just to break the ice a little bit so I get to know you a little bit better, as well as for the listeners. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Morning training or evening training?
Definitely morning.
All right, cardio or strength training?
Strength.
Oh, interesting. Strength. No cardio. Okay, I'm liking that. All right, ride on the road or ride on a trail or dirt?
Definitely dirt.
Okay. Okay, ride inside with or without Zwift?
Without.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay. All right, longest distance you've ever ridden?
110 miles.
Okay. All right, Shimano or SRAM?
Shimano.
All right, first thing you do after a long ride?
Drink a lot of water and find myself a nice peanut butter sandwich.
Okay. All right, if you can go on a ride or train with any celebrity, dead or alive, who would it be?
Reggie Miller.
Yep. Hey, see, great minds think alike. And last one, dream location anywhere in the world to ride?
Spain.
Okay, that's another Spain. Okay, that's twice I'm getting that answer for Spain. Okay. All right. So as with every show, we kind of go into letting the listener, well, not the listener, but excuse me, letting the guest tell their origin story. And the origin story is pretty much starting out from where they were at the beginning to the person they are now as an athlete. So what is your story?
Sure. So I've always been a cyclist, from when I was in high school. I always loved to ride my bicycle to and from school around the neighborhood. And kind of off and on would cycle. And as I got into college, also took up running. And as an adult, learned that you could put the two together in an event. And so as I started upping my training for bicycling, I also started decreasing my running just because of my knees. I had played sports through high school and just really wrecked my knees, and cycling gave me that opportunity to kind of break up that constant pounding on pavement, and but still being able to do both. It really took off when I had a tragedy where I lost my mom and I was just in a dark place. And cycling kind of took over doing duathlons because I could just kind of zone out and really go long distances and kind of work through my grief, work through the challenges that I was having. And it just became an everyday part of who I was. So I could cycle to work and I could work through challenges I was having at the office. I could process things that I needed to do for the day. And then I could also decompress, but I was still getting in that workout. Um, and so just realized that in my long distances to work, that I could also do road cycling in long distances. So I kind of stepped away from doing duathlons to really just doing road cycling. And I joined a local cycling club and started um, participating in local events where I was challenging myself with that local cycling club to achieve mileage. And so the goal was to try and increase my mileage by the end of the year, culminating in one of the local events that would allow you to do 100 miles back to back. So one day you do 100 and the next day you do 100 as well. And so it really helped me to stay active. It helped me to balance my work schedule with this opportunity to train for something that really relaxed me, gave me an opportunity to work on my health, but also gave me the opportunity to really connect with other people that were like-minded, that also loved the same things that I loved. And so I just continued doing that for several years. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, I heard about gravel riding, and got really interested in gravel riding because it reminded me of mountain biking. And mountain biking, out in the woods, gravel riding is very similar, but you use equipment that's more like a road bike. And so I thought, this is a great opportunity. And there was this one ride in Colorado, Steamboat, Colorado, called the SBT Gravel. And so it was the first inaugural event. I signed up for it to do 100 miles and really started working out. And that's where the strength training came in. I found that my cycling got much better by doing strength training as opposed to doing the cardio. And so I took up using the TRX. And just every morning before work, I would just go in and work my plan of um, really doing strength exercises. And then every other day, peppering in doing the cycling. And I just found that my speed increased. I found that my stamina increased. And it also helped to be able to lift the bike over obstacles. When you're out gravel riding, sometimes you have obstacles where you might have to carry the bike up or you might have to carry the bike down. And so it was just a great pairing for me. And again, it just allowed me that opportunity to be out in nature, just really appreciate, enjoy, and just be grateful to be able to experience being in nature, not only alone, but with other people. And I always found that in gravel, you meet interesting individuals. It's always not your typical, duathlon athlete. It's not your typical cycling athlete. It's just a different breed of individuals, I find, where, again, it's that environmental mindset, but it's also the challenge of being out in the wilderness and really pushing your limits. And so I have gravitated more towards gravel events and, really doing a lot of mountain biking just because of the level of strength that's needed. You really have to have strong core. You really have to work on your upper body conditioning so that you can hold yourself upright when you're going down challenging descents and also going up challenging ascents. So that's kind of been my journey. It's been shifting, as I get more and more invested and spend time in different sports. But one thing that's been consistent is it's allowed me to really level up on my fitness, level up on the type of conditioning that I expose myself to, so that I can be a better athlete, if I want to call myself that.
You are an athlete. Nobody you want to call you are an athlete. Period, point blank, you are an athlete.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So, I'm glad to hear that you talking about strength training, because that seems to be one of those things that a lot of times, whether you are um, a runner, whether you're a duathlete, triathlete, strength training is generally not something most people kind of talk about. For runners, you generally talk about, for me to be a better runner, I just need to get out and run more. And even with cycling, you kind of think about it, it's not about you know, from at least from my experience, it's not about just getting on the bike and pedaling, and you know, because you're getting stronger on the bike, but you're not necessarily getting stronger or faster, you know, without adding proper strength training into your system.
Yes, I've found as I've gotten older that a lot of cardio doesn't make my activity or doesn't make me better at the activity. It might help me with endurance. I'm not getting as winded, but I've also found that kind of counterintuitive that the strength training, I just feel, and it's just my perspective. I feel as if I can endure more. I am not as sore afterwards,
Right.
because I've leveraged those muscles in many different ways. And that's why I really love when I condition with the TRX because it's full body.
Yes.
And it,
Yes. I have a cardiac system, so yes.
yeah, yeah, it definitely it works you from, from the as they said, the rooter to the tutor, from the top to the bottom. It definitely works you out. And I when I don't do it and I finally go back, I feel it, and I don't feel it in spots. I feel it across, up and down my body. And so, but it's definitely getting older, that's my go-to strength training.
Okay. So how about your other just training in general? So what does a week of training for you look like?
So it's a combination. So I usually start, I get up early in the morning, and I usually start with TRX. And because of the changes in weather, being on the East Coast, I've really started leveraging rowing. So if I can't get out on my bike, I will generally row because that still gives me upper body, and
Hmm.
it also helps with my legs. And then I will generally try and load cycling towards the end of the week. I do leverage, and when you ask me about Zwift, I don't use Zwift, but I do use Peloton. And so I'm amazed at how accurate that is. I do a lot of the FTP training, functional threshold, and that has also helped. So I incorporate challenges through Peloton with FTP, and also I do rowing and then TRX. But just combining those and mixing them up. It's not a set schedule. It's usually for me what I can fit in because my workday starts at 5:30 in the morning, and I usually don't get home until about 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. And so I need to have something that I can do that I don't have to depend on the weather, that I can still get that workout in and still be able to do any events or activities that I have planned for the weekend.
Okay. So let's touch on a couple of things that you mentioned there. Rowing. I think you and I follow each other online, so you've seen that. I'm a huge fan of rowing.
Right?
Um, and it's really one of those things that kind of surprised me that once I got into it, because I used to kind of dread doing the rowing machine.
Oh, really?
It was one of those things that was like, ah, I need to do something different. Oh, there's a rowing machine. I'll get on and I'll row for 30 minutes. And when I did that, I used to think like, okay, I'm good at rowing until I went and took some formal rowing classes.
Okay.
And that's when I kind of discovered, once the coach was there, was sitting there kind of give me that crazy look like, what the is he doing? And then when I really learned to correct my form with rowing, that's when I really started feeling the benefits of it.
Hmm.
So I'm a huge fan of rowing, but it's one of those things you don't hear many people say that they incorporate into their training.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. I talked to, some of my cycling club members, and when they see my Strava account and they see that I've rode, they'll comment and say, "Wow, that's great," or "Wow, you only did a short period of time." But they see the benefits when I'm out riding with them, because there may be weeks where I don't ride, and I've only rode, but then when I get out with them and I'm riding with them, they're amazed at, just how I'm able to keep up with them, or how my stamina is. And so I'm a big believer, rowing, I think, is kind of the underdog that people don't leverage when it comes to training.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you on that. And the second thing I want to talk about is Zwift. And again, I'm not a Zwifty. You know, I tried it one time, but when I ride on the inside, pretty much during the winter months and stuff, I use pretty much the bike computer that I have on with Wahoo,
Okay.
and that's it. You know,
Okay.
and I get a lot of invites like, oh, you need to get on Swift. We can ride. And I'm like, yeah. I just, to me, I hadn't got caught on to it yet. And that's why I was kind of surprised, because it seems like most cyclists I talk to, like, yeah, I'm on Zwift. I'm on Zwift. What's your Zwift ID?
Our local cycling club in the winter trains using Zwift, and they swear by it. But for me, I would have to say the Peloton has been kind of the best trainer, because I feel like I'm getting a personal trainer. Whereas Zwift, I feel like I'm out there by myself with my club, and I'm basically doing what I would do if we were on the road.
Right.
But if I'm on, like I follow Matt Welpers on Peloton, and he does functional threshold, and he's a runner. He's actually a triathlete. And so he runs and he cycles, and he's constantly coaching you. And he has this program, or challenge each season, to help you get better at your FTP. And it truly is, you can see and track your progress from the beginning of the challenge to the end of the challenge. And I just feel the difference for me is the functional threshold that I see on the Peloton versus the functional threshold that I see on Zwift. Um, doesn't give me the response or the data back that helps me recognize that I'm improving. Because when I would do Zwift, I was never really sure if I had set the bike up properly
Right.
to get the FTP that I should. So I was always questioning myself and asking people, like, do I need to do anything else? Like, how should I set the bike up? Whereas with the Peloton, it's already set up. It's just you do your test. Once you take the test, it sets your threshold. And then you work to improve that threshold from your initial test. And then you take another test at the end to see if there has been, any adjustments. Um, and I do. I always see adjustments, and I can tell when I've stepped away, because my threshold goes completely, down. And then it's just, okay, now I need to work to get my threshold back up. So for me, Zwift, I think it's a valuable tool for a lot of people. It just wasn't a tool that gave me the feedback that I needed to help me continue my training, because I don't have a coach. I do all my training on my own, just because of the time constraints I have.
Right.
It's a feedback loop for me that's immediate, and that I understand it, and I don't have to have a PhD to figure out if I've gotten what I really needed. So
You piqued my interest in the Peloton thing. Now I'm going to sit here. I'm like, let me see
I'm
what.
I'm not a spokesperson. I'm not paid for it. I'm just saying it's my go-to. It was a company that I worked for had one, so when I in the morning I could go in, to the gym, and I could work out on my TRX. I could bring that in and set it up in the private gym, and then they also happen to have the Peloton. And so I started doing it, and I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing, and maybe I should get one myself. And so that's what I did, and it really helped during the pandemic when a lot of the gyms were closed. It really helped when I couldn't get out in a lot of the trails because they were closed due to the pandemic. And so it was another tool that I could add to my repertoire to try and keep myself healthy whenever things got kind of chaotic because of the pandemic.
Okay. So speaking of the pandemic, 2020 just was kind of thrown for a loop for all of us. So with events being canceled, with a lot of gyms being closed and trainings having to be kind of adjusted, how did you adjust during the pandemic?
I took advantage of it. I think by trying to create my home gym prior to the pandemic, um, really helped set the stage when it did happen. It wasn't a huge transition for me. It was just, making sure that I had all the equipment that I needed. So again, having the TRX at home, having the Peloton at home, having, my Concept 2 at home that I could use within my gym, it just allowed me to train more because I had more time. I wasn't commuting to work or having to commute from work to try and get home to train or rushing through my workouts to try and get to the office. So for me, it wasn't a big transition. It was just, you know, I got to ramp up, what I was already doing at home.
Okay. So let's kind of step back a little bit and talk about duathlon. I think
Sure.
that most of the times that, when I've seen you on social media, it's been more towards cycling, uh,
Hmm.
but you're also a duathlete. So
Yes.
what's been your experience with that?
Um, at least in our area, a lot of the duathlons, we were talking right before this, and the organizers don't continue with them. So they might have a duathlon this year, but if the numbers aren't as high as they expected or anticipated, the next year it may be canceled. And so I've found that in my state of Maryland, most times I would have to travel out of state in order to participate in duathlons.
Oh,
It's
wow.
usually geared more towards triathletes, or they are um, spread apart. So it's not like you have this consistent where you can kind of create your schedule. One year I could schedule myself to have one duathlon like every month. Now it's just trying to find one that's in my state so I don't have to travel. And the beauty is we're in a tri-state area, so I can get to like Delaware, Pennsylvania, or even DC, but it's also getting them to have those type of events. And what I've found is um, they are happening less and less, which has kind of pushed me more towards the gravel side because I've seen a lot of organizers switch to gravel riding. Like one of the events I was supposed to do in Colorado was again the SBT, which is happening this week. And then in Pennsylvania, they have what's called the unpaved gravel ride. So those happen more and more, whereas the duathlons, at least in this area, I feel like are happening less and less.
And that's kind of sad, and I know it's hit or miss, Yeah, triathlon, that is the gold standard, I'm doing quote marks, in there that, everybody wants to do. And, duathlons are kind of what is it, the redheaded stepchild.
Yes.
And, you know, there are some organizers that, like you said, that when they don't see enough participation, they kind of cut it out. But I do applaud the organizers we have here in Georgia that, you know, continue to add it, whether we have, 30 participants or we have 10 participants. They still have it because it's still a competition. There's still people that, want to do it. And, one of the things I always kind of remind people is that if you're, on the fence about doing some type of multi-sport, even if you're on the fence about triathlon, I said duathlon is actually a great starting point.
Yes. It is great for cross training. I know for me, both give me the opportunity to try and prove myself, and that's always been the goal, is to try and improve myself in that area, just for me, not for any type of standard. And what I appreciated about duathlons is I knew I was a much stronger cyclist, and I knew that I would have to really invest and bring my A game to the running side of it. So it was just trying to balance myself out. And because we have winters here and it's cold and it's difficult to find bodies of water that you can actually swim in, as opposed to, trying to go to, a Y or some gym that has a pool, because we do have so many triathletes. A lot of times it's difficult to get swim time, and you have to be flexible with your schedule in order to do that. And so for me, here's the sport where I can uh, focus on what I feel is my strength, which is cycling. And then here's this one piece, it's kind of like life. You've got that yin and yang, that balance of,
Right.
here's a sport where I'm not that great. If I had to choose, I wouldn't run. That wouldn't be the first thing I do. But I like it, and especially if I only have to do it for, a few miles, and I can challenge myself to do, 3, 5, or 11 miles and be done, and, just applaud myself of, wow, you completed it. And now you get to do something you really love to do, and you can excel at that. So it's something that I hope to, in 2022, to do more of. 2021, I have definitely decided gravel and mountain biking is where I'm going to really focus.
Okay. Well, let's talk about gravel and mountain biking. I am completely clueless about what a gravel or mountain biking competition would be like, So can you kind of explain that to someone like me who's never done it before? Not saying I'm going to go out there and try it. Because my first experience with a duathlon was an off-road duathlon. And
Okay.
let's just say that was an experience. I didn't come in last place, but I came in, I think, third from last.
And that's the key part, was that it was an experience.
Yes.
And so that's for me, that's what gravel is. Gravel is an experience, it's like your trail that you have in your local area where they finally paved it. But, gravel is, it may be paved, it may not be paved. You could be in some local forest, like your national forest, where you can actually ride the hiking trails. And so there might be roots, there might be rocks, that create some type of hazard, but you overcome it. And that's where the strength comes in, because, you really have to have that stamina to take that jolt. But a race, I participate in races, but for me, it's always the goal is to finish.
Right.
And if I'm dead last, then I'm dead last, but the goal is to finish. And it's usually a mental challenge. And they even say that in a lot of the so-called, and I'm doing air quotes, races. There are individuals who are in age categories that are trying to compete against one another. But generally, if I'm doing it, it's truly just to, okay, can I do, 50 miles off road on what looks like a road bike, but it's kind of modified. The handlebars are a little flared out, to kind of help with, your stability. You might have different size tires. You can still do clip-ins. You can have still the same type of setup as a road bike. It's just a little, a few tweaks to help you be stable in an unstable, kind of ground, with rocks, roots, and, anything else that's out there.
Okay. So now I'm kind of showing my lack of knowledge. So where does cyclocross fit in with this?
So cyclocross, to me, I always think of this is just my explanation to people, is it's like BMX racing. So you're on a course.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has a beginning and an end that's kind of short, that has obstacles. So, like, we have a local cyclocross race here, and I did that like one or two times. And you essentially go in a pattern, and that pattern might have an obstacle that you have to lift your bike over, or that you might have to jump over. You may have to ascend a bridge, or ascend, some type of ladder with your bike. So it's almost, I would say the difference between cyclocross in my mind and gravel is the hazards are in cyclocross are man-made, whereas the hazards in gravel are just natural.
Okay. Well, it sounds like cyclocross is like Spartan on bikes, like a
Yes,
Spartan race on bike.
there you go. That's it. That's a great one.
And I'm like, okay, obstacles. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a Spartan race. Okay, so I'm gonna do this as a two-part question for you.
Okay.
Okay, your proudest moment as an athlete, and then your worst moment or your biggest mistake as an athlete.
Ooh, let's see. My proudest moment was when I completed my first duathlon, dead last. But it was my proudest moment because I
Right.
did not stop.
Yes,
Um,
I know that feeling. I can relate. I know that feeling.
and that I stuck it out, because there were times mentally where I saw people passing me that I just said, just get off the course and let them come and take you. But the proudest moment, and that's what helped me to stay in it and keep doing them over and over again, was that I finished. Um, my um, biggest regret, or where I feel like um, I I don't want to say failed. I would just say that I didn't believe in myself, and I got inside my head. Was I did the SBT gravel, and I psyched myself out. And I think I even reached out to you and I said, "What do you do
Yeah, yeah.
when when you're just like, you can't get out of your head?" And it was because I had signed up for 100 miles in over 3,000 feet of elevation in Colorado, going into higher elevations. I hadn't really trained in a higher elevation environment, and I was just really freaking myself out. And so I lowered my mileage so that I could complete it. And afterwards, I kicked myself because there was a young man that did the same mileage that I had signed up for. He was dead last, and he came in at like 8 something at night, but he did it. And he was so excited and so happy with himself and just elated. And his friends and family that were there to celebrate and cheer him on. Um, it actually did something to me mentally, because I took a sabbatical from doing any sport,
Mm-hmm.
because I had just gotten so into my head that I didn't have a network of people there to really support me. Um, I was, fearful of, here's this first time event, I'm going to come in late. I'm not going to finish. And, they talked about being on the other side of the mountain, you would be by yourself. And there were all these hazards with snakes. And so I just really got into a really bad space, and I could not get myself out of it. And I regretted that I let myself kind of take myself out of the game.
Right. Okay. All right. So here's an important question here. What type of bike do you ride?
Well,
You know that. You know that's the important question.
Well, I think anyone that knows me follows me, and you'll see it in every single picture that I have. I used to be a Bianchi Dama ambassador. I actually had the bike before I became an ambassador.
Hmm.
But I love Bianchi. Number one, because, it's like Tiffany color. So, as a female, come on. Who doesn't want to have Tiffany when you're riding?
Right.
But I love Bianchi, for the brand. I also love it because they were really the um, what's he called? The rep for our area, Will, was very instrumental in giving me guidance on how to set my bike up. And it was the first bike brand where the rep was kind of like hands on. And
Okay.
so he, really, told me what I should do, how to set it up, who to go to get help locally. And so I've just always been impressed with their support. And so I really, um, ended up, I think I own now like 5 Bianchis,
Oh, wow.
for each different sport. So one for when I do my duathlons, one for when I do gravel, one for when I do cyclocross, and one for when I do mountain bike, and one just as my, like, I call it my daily commuter. If I have to go to the store or I just want to like jump on the bike and go somewhere, this bike is kind of like my Swiss Army knife of bikes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I test rode one a while back, and it's a very nice ride.
Hmm.
And I know the salesperson was like, "Oh yeah, just take it down the street," and gone. He didn't have to worry about me, not coming back because they had a credit card and my keys. But it was a very solid bike. I'm a specialized guy myself.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was like, yeah, that, and I think you and I kind of talked about it,
Uh-huh.
too. So I was like, yeah, I might have to look into that bike brand to kind
Yeah,
of,
I think, like with cars, people find a brand that, they align with, and that's what they stick to. I mean,
right,
if I found a bike, and I have been looking at a different mountain bike because the Bianchi doesn't have everything that I'm looking for, or it might be out of my price point.
right,
So, if I have to find a bike that fits what I'm trying to do and accomplish, and it requires me to switch brands, I would certainly do that. Just so that I could continue doing the sports that I love.
right, exactly. All right, so let's imagine you had a time machine.
Hmm.
What would you go back and tell your younger self based upon what you know now?
Um, let's see. I think I would go back and tell my younger self, to push harder, with exploring sports. It took a while for me to move into doing duathlons or any multi-sport, and it was because of uh, not feeling like I fit in. I always thought certain sports were for certain people.
Hmm.
And so I would really encourage my younger self to not let that be a barrier, that if you love doing it and you have an interest, just do it.
Right. Okay. All right. So, what would your message be to a person who says it's too late to start? Whether it start to run, start to cycle, start to do duathlon, start to do triathlon, just whatever they want to try to do as a sport. Because again, when I started when I was in my early 40s, and I'm getting ready to, in a few weeks, enter my 50s, which is
Oh,
surprising.
congratulations.
Thank you. But that's one of the things I hear from some of my coworkers and friends that they're like, oh, it's just too late for me to start trying to think about doing that now. So what would be your advice to someone like that?
Just start small, even if it's just riding in your neighborhood. If you go to the first stop sign and turn back around, just start. That's it. Whether it's running, whether it's cycling, skateboarding,
Right.
whatever it is, just pick a distance that makes sense for you, and use that as your guide to get you there. At least you're moving, and do something that speaks to you. So if it's cycling, go ahead and try it and just find that one, you know, um, point that you want to go to or that you want to get to. But definitely just get out there and do it.
Right, exactly. Best advice. Keep it simple and get it started.
Right.
All right. So, what's a non-athletic fact about you that most people don't know?
Hmm. That I love puzzles.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Puzzles in general, or like jigsaw type puzzles?
I'm a jigsaw puzzle type person.
Okay, you're one of those ones to get the big box, pour it out on the table, and just
That's
start.
it. Nerd alert. Just, just, again, it's mental. It's a lot of
Right.
focus. It just helps you to kind of, put the pieces together. And yeah, I love puzzles.
Okay. All right. Last question. So, what's next for you? Are you training for anything? Any races coming up? Anything that's big on your plate for 2021?
2021 for me is to really mentally shift. 2019 was very hard for me with a lot of, I lost my father and, just some challenges at work.
Right.
And so I really didn't get to expend a lot of energy on training. So that's why I backed out of SBT gravel this year.
Hmm.
I will probably do the same for unpaved. Um, and so it's really just trying to mentally get myself in that space of, um, I want to go out there and I want to perform. And so I've just kind of given myself that, use this time to get myself healthy, get myself mentally together, and then use 2022 to start mapping out, because hopefully things will change and races will, and events will come back in full swing in 2022. And so I deferred a lot of my events for this year until 2022. So that's going to be my year to try and reclaim what I've lost this year.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Danielle, thank you for being a guest on the show.
Well, Eric, thank you for having me. This is great.
Oh, yes. Awesome conversation with you. And if anybody wants to get in contact with you, how can they do so?
They can reach out to me on Instagram. My username is Dama Ciclismo.
It is in the notes and stuff in case you're wondering how to spell that, everyone.
Yes.
All right, well, Danielle, again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Eric. Have a great one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in each week. If you enjoyed today's show, please support us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast, so we can continue to have awesome conversations with everyday athletes just like you. Until next time, have an amazing week.